Okay, it's about, all right. I'm not really supposed to start this till 3, and it's not quite 3 yet. So, yeah, so we're just kind of getting started here. I'm doing this on both TikTok and YouTube at the same time. So depending on what you're seeing here is going to be different. I'm using 2 phones mic'd to it. So basically, yeah, I want to talk for just an hour. That's pretty much all the time I've got for today about something that's kind of, well, hey, I'll admit, I've done live shows before. This is the first time I'm doing them, and I'm hoping to start doing them every day, or at least every weekday. Kind of want to be sort of like, I don't know, sort of a late night host, but without the late night here. I'm going to try adjusting this one here. Okay, wasn't really in the center there. Looks like you can see the top of my backdrop there, but that's fine. Okay, so if you're not familiar with me, I'm Mark Rollins, and I operate the Geek Church, which is a site devoted to product reviews. And I've also recently started doing a lot of stuff based on essentially stuff I like, entertaining things I like. And today, or this entire week, I want to talk about crazy crossovers. These are ideas I have to do with mixing intellectual properties that haven't been done before. Now, crossovers are nothing new to the world of movies or a landscape. And as we sort of are starting to become very addicted to IP, we are wanting to see stuff like this happen, where essentially like, where you're going to want to see like, hey, you just mix it in like, I don't know, like say, for example, if we're going to go with the Marvel movie formula, they basically introduce these characters one at a time. And then they create the Avengers, which is a film with all those characters in it. But as they went along and introduced these characters, they were starting to add other characters in there. And it just made sense. So when they finally got to adding all the characters in there, wow, it was a big event. And if you remember, let's see, was it 2012 where they did that? Oh, it was quite something. So yeah, I've got a little thing here. Basically, where I'm just going to talk about today. It's going to be about the Muppets versus the Avengers, and maybe versus isn't quite the proper term. I have to admit, this is one of those things where I'm kind of going like, I don't feel right about like these things, because when they usually do crossovers, like in comic books, generally this is how it works. They'll have somebody like, say, Spider-Man, and then somebody like, I don't know, Daredevil will show up. And then for some reason, they'll get in a misunderstanding. They'll fight for a little while, and then they'll suddenly realize like, hey, aren't we on the same side? And then they'll go like, yeah, let's go after the real villain, the Kingpin, or something like that would happen. So I'm just going to talk. I don't really have a script here. I'm just going to talk about stuff that I really like here, which is, I'm going to start by talking about the Muppets. The Muppets, I have I've got like a 50-year relationship with the Muppets. I mean, shoot. Sesame Street was one of the first things that I even remember watching on TV. And of course, that was sponsored by Jim Henson, who, of course, had created the Muppets by that time. And the Muppets actually date back to like the 50s, back when Jim Henson used to put them on commercials that you can watch that were incredibly violent, as he would advertise Wilkins coffee or something like that. It's crazy how much that this was like this. And so I'm not sure how the Muppets sort of got along. I think they were just sort of like these puppet acts that would always show up. And then sometime in the 70s, they were given their own show. And this was after Sesame Street was created. And I think most people knew the Muppets from Sesame Street. And I guess Jim Henson had a special relationship with Kermit, who was always kind of on the Muppet Show one way or the other. Not as much anymore, I don't think. But of course, Kermit was the host of this Muppet Show, which was essentially a variety show, which is the type of show we just don't really have now. This idea of essentially where you just have a show, there's a host, and then you just bring out different sort of acts. But with the Muppet Show was a different take on them, because most of they had there was always a celebrity guest, I can tell you that much. But all the acts were essentially done in-house on the Muppet Show with their puppetry and stuff like that. I actually believe the Muppets is sort of like a combination of a marionette and a puppet, because if you look at how a Muppet is done, there's usually one guy doing the voice and then one guy operating one hand, and then there's often another guy operating another hand on a stick. And you can usually see the sticks they're using. And in some cases, like for characters like, say, the Swedish chef, I mean, he actually has his own set of hands. That was Jim Henson doing that. And personally, that's something I really liked about seeing the Muppets, is you were always really able to see that sort of puppetry. So by the time the Muppet Show was about ready to go off the air, it started working into movies. The Muppet movie is, honestly, I think it's one of the greatest family films of all time. I actually think it's very underrated. I think it's not something that anyone really talks about anymore, but at the time, I mean, it had like all these celebrity guest stars in it. And I remember watching this movie with my kids, telling them how great it was. And I kept going like, that guy's dead, that guy's dead, that guy's dead. And it's like, and yeah, it's true. I think the only actor that is alive in that thing is probably like Austin Pendleton and possibly, oh gosh, like Steve Martin is in that thing. So, and he's still around on Only Murders in the Building and stuff. Anyway, for the most part, the Muppets have always been kind of a staple. Their next outing was Great Muppet Caper, which I have to say isn't as good. And it does establish the Muppets as sort of, maybe they should have stayed on television, but at the same time, I understand the idea of them going to the movies. Because when the Muppets went to the movies, they were often playing different roles other than themselves. I don't really know how to explain how the Muppets works, but it's kind of like, if you watch the Muppets in the movies, they're often breaking the fourth wall, implying that they themselves are actually different characters than the ones that are portrayed, which is, I think, the magic of the Muppets, is that these puppets are essentially people in this world that are essentially kind of maybe marginalized, but essentially they fit in. There's no origin stories of where Muppets come from. They just sort of are there, and they're interacting with people, and they are people. And I think that's kind of what makes them really work and stuff like that. And so like in the Great Muppet Caper, the Muppets are actually, only Fozzie, Gonzo, and Kermit actually know each other, but at this time they're meeting other Muppets in the thing, like Miss Piggy, for example, and they are pretending that they don't really know her. And by say pretending, I say that they are often saying in the fact that they are in a movie. So, and many of the characters are so breaking the fourth wall, it's sort of like, that's kind of the gag when you watch the Muppets, that it's essentially, that's how it works. And since they're comedy, it kind of works out really well. Then I think in '84, they made The Muppets Take Manhattan. And this is a film, I don't think I've ever actually just sat down and watched it from beginning to end. I remember like when I had kids, I had the DVD because it was on the back of some cereal box. Seriously, that was back when they were doing that. And so I remember putting it in every once in a while to kind of entertain my kids and maybe myself. And there were certain scenes where I would keep watching over and over again, but for the most part, I think I've just never watched it from beginning to end. And it is the most Muppet of all the movies, because the Muppets, I think, are actually playing themselves. The Muppets, I think, in this world, they have sort of, they've kind of became sort of, they're kind of like in college or something like that. Now, I've just been told that no one can hear the audio, at least on the TikTok here, which is a real shame. I don't really know what to do here. Okay, looks like somebody has said, oh, there. Okay, great. So I'm hoping that they can hear that. I actually have two microphones in here, one for TikTok and one for that. Okay, they said I heard it for a sec. All right, I guess I'm going in. Shoot. Okay, I think I'm planning on putting this on YouTube later in its whole, because I think that's how you can do this. Again, I'm trying this here, and this is kind of how this works. So, anyway, so, and then unfortunately, after the Muppets Take Manhattan, the Muppets kind of went in a dark phase for a year. They didn't do anything for a while until Jim Henson's, let's see, what was it called? The Jim Henson Hour in '89 or so. And I think what happened there was that Jim Henson was sort of experimenting, and he was trying to do new things, and there was a show on NBC. Unfortunately, he passed away in '89, and that was a very sad time. Or actually, I think it was 1990 or something like that. I remember, like, it was before I graduated high school. Um, it was just it's just very sad here. Um, so basically, I kind of felt like this, the way the Muppets were going, it took, like, I think, like 4 years before they made the Muppets Christmas Carol, and this is when they started this pattern of essentially adapting works of literature. They did the Muppet Treasure Island later. In between that time, they had a show called Muppets Tonight, which was meant to be some sort of revival of the Muppet Show, but on a kind of a different sort of format. They still had the celebrity guests, and they still had all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of was that, and then and then they did, like, Muppets in Space. I think by that time the Muppets had sort of, I wouldn't say they've sort of dropped off the map, but they were far from being relevant then. A lot of people like Muppets in Space. I've watched it at that time. I think Muppets changed hands from Disney to, what's it called? Columbia. I think they were owned for that. And then I think I don't remember the year, because basically Jason Segel made the film Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and he had a lot of Muppet performers in it for the final scene. And this is when I think Disney decided to reboot the Muppets. It's not really a reboot because they seem to acknowledge the fact that the Muppets existed. If you've ever seen Jason Segel's The Muppets, it is full of a lot of Muppet love. It shows what it was like to be a kid who was raised by the Muppets. And I really liked that element of that film. So it seems like with the Muppets, every fourth film seems to work, is kind of how that seems to go about. So essentially, when I'm talking about the Muppets versus the Avengers, I'm not talking about a situation where the Muppets would meet the Avengers. I'm talking about where the Muppets actually become the Avengers. You see where I'm going with this? This is not something where it's like the Muppets meet with the Avengers and that's going to be how that works. So yeah. So I really think that there's a lot of potential for this idea. Now I'm going to talk about the Avengers because I know that they're household names because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Avengers films. And they've made, like, 4 of them, and they're planning on making 2 more of them. And then they're probably going to make more Marvel movies to the end of time, because this is a moneymaker for them, even though some of the latest offerings really haven't been all that good, but that's another story. I started reading comics around, I don't know, 1982 or something like that. And I understood that there were certain teams in the big two, and by big two, I'm talking about DC and Marvel, because that was about all you could really read back then, although there were independent comic companies, and still are, and they're gaining popularity. But the Avengers were essentially the big team up of all the big ones that they had back then. So at the time, when I was reading, or I didn't even really read the Avengers. Actually, I did start reading the Avengers in '84 with the West Coast Avengers, which was a branch out of the team there. I won't really get into that then, but even then I discovered that the Avengers had been around for about 20 years, and they had a roster that was constantly adjusting itself. And there were certain people that seemed to be always on the team, or for the most part on the team, like Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. They were usually on it. So it's kind of weird when we got to the cinematic universe. The team that they initially chose included Black Widow, who was only on the team for not very long back then, and didn't really last very long on the team. And then Hulk lasted only like a few issues on the team, and then he was just so irrational they really couldn't keep him on. So it's kind of interesting that they have that there. So anyway, so with the Avengers, it was always really about, I mean, they were a super team. They like had a mansion. It wasn't like that tower that you see in the cinematic universe. They had a mansion. They would have weekly meetings. They would have monitor duty. They always had, there were always people coming and going. Mostly it was 6 people is what they had. And they kept doing things where they would just, they would disband the team, and then they would get a new team back together. And then this whole team would then be like, oftentimes different members. And some cases they got it really weird. Like they had a Dr. Druid to the team. It was just really interesting. I don't even know. Yeah. So But so I never really read it. I actually was more interested in the West Coast Avengers, which was, as I said, the offshoot of the team. There was, I think Hawkeye was leading that team, and for a while, and then that just got really weird. There was so much stuff that got pretty weird on that. Yeah, well, I mean, it's comics, so there was always stuff like this. There were big sagas that honestly, I mean, trying to think of the stuff. I think Loki was the first villain that the Avengers ever faced, so naturally that translated very well to the MCU. Ultron, of course, was a pretty famous villain of the Avengers, so naturally he got his own movie. As far as the whole Infinity War thing, I had stopped reading comics before that Infinity Gauntlet / Infinity War thing happened, so I was just not really familiar with this. So here's the thing. This is where I'm going to talk about how I would mix the two. And here's the thing. Something tells me this has already been done, because after all, Disney owns Marvel and the Muppets still. Now, I have to say that there's this is something that a lot of people on the internet have been talking about, is the fact that the Muppets have essentially been, a lot of people think the Muppets have been abandoned by Disney. And the reason why they have that thought is because, there's like a certain ride in Disneyland that's been there for years that I think it was actually put in there when Jim Henson was still alive. And yeah, so essentially that was kind of the thing there. So, and basically it was like a 3D ride or something like that, or it was like used 3D glasses and you could watch the Muppets there. And they basically just decided to discontinue this ride or this experience and stuff like that. And that got a lot of people upset, because it got a lot of people thinking like Disney is abandoning the Muppets. And it's been like since what, Muppets Most Wanted. There's still a few Muppet things that have shown up on Disney Plus. I think Muppets Haunted Mansion was like the latest thing they had, and that was all right, but that was like a few years ago. I think there is a show that they recently did where they're doing like almost like podcasts or something like that, which honestly I didn't really think that was really good. I watched a few episodes of it and I just kind of thought, this is kind of not really your best Muppet material. But these characters, these core characters, are just so iconic and they so are relatable that it's sort of like, why wouldn't you do something like this where you'd basically make them Avengers or something like that? To me, I feel like we should just have a scads of Muppet movies that are basically based on a lot of intellectual property. I would pay to see Muppets and the Phantom of the Opera. I would want to see that. Kermit would be Raoul, Miss Piggy would be Christine Daae, and Gonzo would be the Phantom. That's easy. That writes itself. Is someone writing this down? Dude, I mean, I remember talking about this stuff. You could mix the Muppets with pretty much anything, and they have. They've done sketches. They've done Muppet specials where they've tried to mix a few things. I remember a certain Muppet movie special that tried to mix the Muppets with Gone with the Wind and another famous classic thing. If you watch, there's a very, very famous classic episode of The Muppet Show where Mark Hamill appears with the stars of Star Wars, like C-3PO and Chewbacca show up there. And that ends with a very odd kind of mix where Gonzo plays Darth Vader. And they even show a castle and they sing When You Wish Upon a Star. And it's a weird prophecy of how the world was going to change for the Muppets. I can tell you that much. Because now Disney owns both that and Star Wars. So I don't know. It's just sort of a weird thing. Catch that episode on... on Disney Plus if you haven't. And I actually think the Muppet Show on Disney Plus has like warnings on it because of certain cultural insensitivity and jive like that. Yeah, humor doesn't age well all the time. What can you say? Anyway, so I have to admit, okay, so here's how my Muppet and Avengers crossover is gonna happen. Okay, so remember how in the Avengers Cinematic Universe it ends with the city of New York being attacked by the Chitauri, or I can't remember, Chitauri, whatever. There was that alien race that worked with Loki that is really not memorable at all. I think they're supposed to be the Skrulls in the thing, but the Skrulls were shape changers, so they didn't really go that direction here. But it basically starts out in this Muppet movie where you get introduced to the characters. And of course, I've decided to make Kermit the Frog Captain America. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to comment in, or there's going to be a lot of people that are going to mention after this, should Kermit be Captain America? Shouldn't he be somebody like, say, Sam the Eagle? And I have to say, here's the thing of what I feel about Sam the Eagle. Sam the Eagle is he's been basically one of my favorite Muppet characters. I feel like there's sort of a thing about him that I don't really trust. Honestly, when I see Sam the Eagle, I think MAGA. Maybe it's because he's an eagle, but he's blue, so hey, maybe he voted Democrat. But honestly, when I look at Sam the Eagle, I can't help but think like he was there at January 6th, okay? You know he was, okay? he was there, okay? So I would feel, I want to do that, and I definitely have a place for Sam the Eagle, but I'm not really certain where to put him and stuff like that. I've only really given a thought to the main six. That is the main six Avengers, with Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hulk, Hawkeye, and I know I missed one, Thor. So yeah. So basically, this thing opens with showing like Captain America and fighting with the other characters there, who at the time are two other characters. We have Hawkeye, who's portrayed by Gonzo. Why do I have Gonzo as Hawkeye? He's purple, okay? And Hawkeye's outfit is purple. And honestly, I like Hawkeye. If you've seen Hawkeye, you've seen that he has a really good attitude as far as like the fact that he's willing to put himself into danger, even though he's just got a bow and arrow. This is something that you saw in Avengers Age of Ultron, something that I kind of really liked. But yeah, I kind of felt like with Hawkeye, you sort of have him there and he's just kind of shooting arrows at the enemy. So naturally, with Hawkeye, we're going to have Black Widow. And who's going to play Black Widow? Who do you think? Okay, who's the only woman in the Muppet universe that it gets any press? That's right, Miss Piggy is going to play Black Widow. Okay, if you think about it, it feels like the only way you could go, right? I really felt like, that was the only way. So as far as like why I chose Kermit as Captain America, the one thing I've always appreciated about Kermit is that you will see Kermit lose his and you will see Kermit do very human things, but Kermit is very human. That's one of the things I kind of like about him. But he's also very humble. That's the thing I like about him, is you never see Kermit being selfish. That's one of the things that I have always really appreciated about him. And I think for that reason, a lot of the Muppets throw him, they always will look to him as the leader. So I kind of felt like in the Marvel movies, let's see, Steve Rogers is kind of that guy. He's sort of this guy who remembers a greater time of where people were heroes. I really appreciated in the Captain America origin movie how he is fighting to get in the war, and how we just don't see that now these days. It's a very different type of world and stuff like that. So yeah, anyway, so Kermit / Captain America, or Kermit America, let's call him that, are fighting the Qatari on the streets of New York City. And that one final scene in the Avengers where where Loki is invaded and everything is just going down. And they're doing the best they can to fight. And of course, Miss Piggy has her guns and, is going like, oh, hey, oh, I'm going to blast aliens. Okay, maybe that's not no good. Okay, maybe that's a good impersonation. I don't know. But, and Gonzo's there doing like, trying to shoot with my bow and arrow. Okay, I can't really do a good Gonzo impersonation. All right, if you can, let me know. That guy has been Gonzo for like over quite a few decades, and he still does it, I'm told. So that's kind of cool, actually. So, and of course, they get surrounded by aliens. And then at the time where they get totally surrounded, the three of them, someone comes in, and it's Iron Bear. Yeah, I made Fozzie the Bear Iron Man, okay? honestly, when it comes to Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. has played Tony Stark as this kind of vainglorious guy that still kind of feels that, I mean, I kind of like this idea that when they created Iron Man, he's essentially the 1% if the 1% were to help people. Now, yeah, it's very different to put him in there as, say, Iron Man, but, you know, hey, I decided to do that. And I could even have this thing where he's kind of like zooming around with the kind of the that space armor that he's got, or the red and blue, or the red and gold armor, and just, and you know, he's got the kind of the mask there, and it's just kind of like. Now the thing that I thought about is, like, if you know anything about Fozzie the Bear, is he can't tell jokes. Okay, he's a bad comedian. He knows he's a bad comedian, and he still does it anyway. And honestly, that's one of the things I really liked about Fozzie, is just he was kind of like that. And so, and as he's going around, he's shooting things, going waka waka wah, waka waka waka, waka waka wah, waka waka waka. If you know the Iron Man theme, it kind of goes like that, but I put the waka 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 thing in there because if you know Fozzie the Bear, he was always kind of saying that, because it's like he was always trying to prove the fact he was funny, but in fact he actually was funny. But the fact that he wasn't funny actually kind of made him funny the most. And it's a really hard thing when you're talking about Fozzie the Bear. It really is. And so I just kind of think like he'd be pretty funny as Fozzie, and he's like blasting those with his, you know, his whatever, his hand. I think they call them palm receptors or something like that. I can't remember what they called this thing. It has a name in the comic, but you know, where Tony's like blasting things with this thing. And so he's just kind of blasting them and stuff like that. And it's like, ah, and it's like, you know, he does this, ah, we're fighting the aliens, ah, because of course he does that sort of thing. And then of course this thing gets interrupted by of course more of this Qatari and stuff like that. And this is where it kind of gets a little strange, where I kind of have some people might, I know there's going to be some people that are going to critique the way I decided to cast this, but Dr. Banner's going to be in this thing, and he's just going to be kind of sitting around, kind of taking shelter behind the other three heroes in this thing. And he's going to be played by Dr. Bunsen Honeydew. Now, if you know anything about the Muppets, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, with his assistant Beaker, was a constant recurring sketch on this show. And Dr. Bunsen Honeydew was this kind of green puppet who had glasses, essentially like mine, but apparently he had no eyes behind them, which I thought was really odd. But his sketches were always really funny, but because he would always have this new invention that he would be demonstrating, and he always demonstrated on his assistant, Beaker. Now, if you know anything about Beaker, Beaker is one of the greatest Muppets ever made. Beaker has just very frizzy red hair, big bug-out eyes, one large nose, and a mouth that talks like this. Me, 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 me. And that's all he kind of says. Everything is kind of is sort of, and it always goes out like me, 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 me. You know, and Dr. Bunsen Honeydew is always trying this thing on him. There's this one sketch where he invents like edible paper clips, and Beaker starts shoving them down and eating them, and then suddenly Beaker's nose just falls off. And it's usually how a Muppet Labs sketch would end. So in this thing, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew is playing Dr. Banner, and he doesn't really know what to do. And he's, of course, afraid to get angry because he knows that the Hulk will come out. And then he goes, "Do you want to know my secret? I am always angry." And then suddenly he starts to change. And who does he change into? Beaker. That's right. Beaker is the Hulk in this thing. And he's constantly going around going like, me, 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 because, you know, the Hulk says smash. Well, Beaker just goes, me, because, you know, that's Beaker. And that's kind of what I thought of him. Now, it's kind of weird to do this because, well, let's put it this way. Dr. Bunsen Honeydew is green. And Beaker is, in fact, white, or at least he appears to be Caucasian. Honestly, all the 6 Avengers in the MCU are white, except for maybe the Hulk. But you know, even when he's Bruce Banner, he's white. So yeah, I mean that's kind of, those are original things like that, and they're trying to get a bit more racially diverse characters in this thing, and I'm kind of glad they are. So yeah, that's kind of going how they kind of went there. I kind of liked how I kind of like the way I did this. I like this idea of this, and and it's kind of like sort of, what do they call that when it's sort of like they kind of like subvert expectations is what I'm trying to do. And I hope hopefully I did that with this idea of, say, the Hulk as Beaker and Dr. Bunsen Honeydew as Banner. That just works really well. In fact, I could call him Dr. Banner Honeydew. That just makes sense. And yeah, I'm not sure what I call the Hulk, the Beak. Oh my gosh, that just wrote itself. I swear I didn't really have that planned. But then again, I'm kind of going off script. These are just ideas that I had been floating in my head for a while. I've never written them down. And I think I've mentioned before on this channel that I used to write a lot of sketches for like certain college age groups. And a lot of times I'd have the idea and I wouldn't develop it until like years later. So by the time I actually wrote it down, it just flowed out, and it just flowed out really well. And I just kind of knew what jokes to go with and what jokes not to go with. This one is kind of like that. Okay, so then, of course, during the sketch, they get surrounded by even more evil guys. So then they need more help. And this is when Thor shows up. And Thor is portrayed by Swedish Chef. Yeah, Swedish Chef plays Thor in this. And I've done impersonations of Swedish Chef. I think I might have posted a recent thing when I did it at like a trivia thing with Sing Along with Swedish Chef. So yeah, I'm very familiar with Swedish Chef and studied him very well. And I think he's a great choice to play Thor. And so he's kind of going like, so when he shows up, he does this thing. It's like, and of course he throws his hammer, and then the hammer goes over there. And you know how Mjolnir, the hammer's does all that thing. And so it's like, and of course he catches it and like looks pretty awesome. And that's the Swedish Chef as Thor. So this has to exist somewhere. The fact that I came up with this so quickly when I initially came up with it, I know somebody has actually done this. This is like one of those things where you make up something and then you suddenly realize, like, surely somebody has done this before. And yeah, generally that's kind of how that works. Somebody has usually done it before. And if they have, hey, that's great. Like I said, there's all kinds of comic books that I haven't read since the 90s. So chances are, and since Disney does own both Marvel and the Muppets, I actually got an email the other day from the Marvel Comics publicity, and they put out variant covers of these things with Muppets. And I think for the Hulk, they actually chose Beaker as the scientist, and then him becoming Dr. Bunsen Honeydew / Hulk, and that makes sense. I mean, I guess I guess you could work it that way if you wanted to. I have no idea if these stories have been developed or not. It wouldn't be very difficult to if you wanted to, and I'm surprised that kind of hasn't happened. But hey, I mean, I don't write this stuff, so. Anyway, so basically that leads to them just sort of fighting off this thing, and I am not certain what I would want to do. I think I've talked to a few friends about how I'd want to approach this Muppets as the Avengers idea. And when it comes to the villains, I don't really want there to be, say, Muppets playing the villains. Traditionally, if you're watching a Muppet movie, a Muppet is usually not a villain in the thing, except for maybe Constantine from the film Muppets Most Wanted, the guy that was an impersonator of Kermit. That was essentially just another Kermit puppet with a weird mole. Generally, the bad guy is usually some A-list actor or some celebrity, somebody that you've at least heard of before. I'm trying to think of some good examples. Like they had Tim Curry play Long John Silver in Muppet Treasure Island. They had Michael Caine as Scrooge as that. So maybe not a villainous persona. But as far as anybody, I think for Great Muppet Caper, there was a definite bad guy who was played by Charles Grodin, and I'm not sure how big of a star he was back then. But essentially, yeah, you have that aspect there. So I was actually kind of thinking like you should just have the humans play the villains. So if we want to have Loki in this, we actually have maybe Tom Hiddleston or something like that. I don't know. If you wanted to adapt this with Muppets, you're definitely going to have to cut down the budget somewhere. And the Muppets are really good about getting celebrity cameos. But oftentimes when they often get very A-list people to be in their films. Sometimes. It's actually the Muppet movie had had an A-list star of just gold cameos like Richard Pryor, Bob Hope, just a lot of people. But when they get to the main actors, they're usually not really that popular as far as like the main villains goes. It's kind of something that the Muppets sort of have done throughout the years, and who knows. One thing I like about doing this idea is here's the thing. I think for this Muppet Avengers thing, the Muppets would play the good guys. And I've thought about some of the other, I'm just going to throw out a few ideas that I've had as Muppet characters that we can add. I feel like Rolf would be Nick Fury. I like that idea of putting a patch on him and then having him just sort of up there and going like, this is the way you need to go, Muppets. Okay, that was not a good Rolf impersonation. I can't really do that good Muppet impersonations or something like that. Swedish Chef I can do, okay? I get two people testifying on that. As far as like some of the other, I'm trying to think of some of the other Muppet characters here. Now, I want to get into a few things on this because I had another episode planned for this Muppet sketch if I ever wanted to do it. And this would involve the Muppet Guardians of the Galaxy. I know, you probably might be able to see where this is coming, where this is going. Okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy, there's 5 members. We've got Star-Lord, Gamora, let's see, Groot, Drax, and then Rocket. So here's the thing. If you look at the Muppets, they have a background band that has appeared in pretty much every one of their movies and is always sort of around. And that band is, of course, the Electric Mayhem, who have just recently got their own series. And that's one of the most recent Muppet projects there has been. Sad to say. I kind of wish there was more of these things. Anyway, so I feel like what would happen is the Electric Mayhem would be the Guardians of the Galaxy. So the leader would be, now I'm kind of debating. I'm not really certain what to do as far as, because I think if we look at the leader, that would probably be, say, Dr. Teeth. So I guess he would play Star-Lord, I guess. Just by default, just like I kind of had Kermit play Captain America, I guess we could just go with that. So yeah, and then from there we get to let's see, and if we have Janice the Muppet. Oh, like I'm so sure, like totally. Yeah, that's Janice if you're familiar with her. She would definitely play Gamora because again, woman. Yeah, sorry I have to do that. Unfortunately, that was like there's not a lot of women characters on Muppets. They had to invent a few for the Muppet Babies twice. Yeah, no, that's another story in and of itself. And then for Groot, we have I am Zoot because there's a character on the Muppets named Zoot. So he would just constantly say, I am Zoot. And that is genius. When I thought of that, I thought, oh my gosh, I created something incredible there. There's some times where, as a writer, you give yourself a pat on the back a little bit too hard. I'm pretty sure I gave myself a pat on the back way too hard there. But yeah, that felt right. If you know anything about Zoot, he tends to just sort of be a very silent type, and yeah. And then this is going to be a controversial thought because I'm sure there were a lot of people that wanted Animal to play the Hulk, which actually that does track, that does fit. But in my world, since I want the Guardians of the Galaxy to be the Electric Mayhem, I have decided that Animal will play Drax. Yeah, I kind of like that idea. Drax, Drax, Drax. Yeah, get Thanos, beat Thanos. Something like that. I don't know. It's just, again, I can't really do good Muppet impersonations. I probably could if I had more of a script, but I'm trying to be unscripted because, I don't know, I just thought I'd do that. So yeah, and then of course that leaves Rocket, who I guess would be Scooter, simply by default. There is another character that I think was on the Muppets Mayhem named Lips. It's kind of this yellow kind of furry thing who appears like in the background of a lot of things. Maybe we could cast him as that. We could do that if we wanted to. Maybe we should. And then Scooter would be, I don't know, Mantis. Okay, I don't know. I really don't know about that. Again, because woman and yeah, maybe we could get Scooter's twin sister, Skeeter, to play that. Yeah, I know. Okay, that's a Muppet Babies reference. If you know, you know, and I hate to use that term, but That's what I'm going to use. So basically, that's kind of how that would work. Now, here's the thing. I actually kind of thought about doing this funny thing where they actually meet Thanos and his Eternity Glove, which is just essentially the Infinity Gauntlet, and then having some weird thing where they face off with them, and then basically Thanos has this whole thing where he's kind of got these gems, and he has to. Actually, I thought about doing this really funny gag where the Guardians of the Galaxy or the Electric Mayhem / Muppet Avengers meet up, and then they confront Thanos, and he's all like going like, and it's like, and now I'll stop you with my green gem and he's kind of going like, what does this do again? And it's like, then he has to go in his pocket to figure out like which one does the other, and so he sort of like has to take off his Infinity Gauntlet. To look in his pocket to see which gem does what power. And then while he does that, the Muppets / Guardians of the Galaxy take the glove, and then that's it. That's the sketch. It's so anticlimactic, and yet at the same time, it feels kind of Muppet. I don't know. I remember having that idea for an ending and kind of going like, yeah, I think we're kind of sick of all this like, and then they go like, hey, aren't we going to have a big CG fight or something like that? It's like, nah, we're not going to do that. And they just kind of like, and then the Muppets just sort of play themselves off. I don't know. That's an idea I had, that if you wanted to do, say, a Muppets meet the Avengers or a Muppet / Avengers sort of crossover, that's the basic gist of what I had thought of doing. So what do you guys think of this? Do you guys think that there's any potential for this? Disney, if you're out there, if you're listening, if you've seen this, maybe you think like, okay, that we might be able to work with such an idea like that. Give me a call. I'll see if I can't write you up a treatment of some type. And there is a lot more you could do with this, because you could satirize the entire MCU with the Muppets, and people would pay money for that. I actually believe that there's a few Muppet projects that have been canceled. One of them I discovered a while ago called like the Muppets cheapest movie ever made. That is just that honestly, I did some research on that, and yeah, I actually thought like, crap, I would have actually paid to see this movie. Ever since Jim Henson died, I think there was sort of a move to try and make Gonzo kind of the front man for the Muppets, and that never really took, which is a real shame, because I actually think that there's a lot of potential for that. So yeah, very much a shame. Okay, so all right, I'm going to talk about a few more things I had with ideas, because when it comes to the Muppets, some of them didn't really convert very well to MCU characters. For example, when it came down to Waldorf and Statler, those are the two guys that are in the balcony. They're always heckling Fozzie. I didn't really know what to use them for. I mean, when I first saw like what was it, the Muppet Christmas Carol, and they turned Marley's ghost into both Waldorf and Statler, in spite of the fact that it was supposed to be a singular character, I went like, shoot, I actually wish I would have thought of that. That was a brilliant idea, actually. And that was perfect Muppet casting for those two. But when it comes down to, say, who they would be in the MCU, I remember there's a scene where, say, Nick Fury was talking to the powers that be at the Avengers, and essentially those are the guys that wanted to essentially nuke New York City, but Nick Fury was all like, man, they almost got it. Do you really have to go all this way? And it's and I had to admit, I went like, geez, yeah, no, that is kind of stupid. So I kind of thought, yeah, it'd be a great, Waldorf and Statler would be like a great powers that be over the Avengers or something like that. Yeah, they could kind of do something like that, I guess. Trying to think of other Muppet characters, like, okay, oh yes, Sam the Eagle. He could be the Falcon. Come on, he's almost there. He's got the wings. He could easily be the Falcon. Granted, he'd be, I don't know. Sam, I don't know. I always see Sam the Eagle as more of a white guy. I'm not sure if the Muppets kind of have any various ethnics to them, unless you count that one guy who was the host for a while on Muppets Tonight. I don't even remember his name, for crying out loud. They've since retired that character. Yeah, Muppets need more diverse races, that's for sure. But then again, they're already diverse. They're like animals and stuff like that. Who cares? So yeah. As far as the Vision and the Scarlet Witch goes, I'm drawing a blank on that one. I can't really think of anybody like I said, the Muppets don't have a lot of female characters, so, or at least characters that identify as female. So yeah, I don't really have any options for that, really. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other people. Quicksilver. Ugh, I don't know. You know that guy that throws the boomerang fish, New Zealand? What would he be? There's got to be a place for a Muppet like that in the Avengers universe. Practically, he's got his own superpower. Practically, I don't know. So yeah, I'm trying to think of something for like that. I think I pretty much covered all the basic Muppet characters, really. So I think that's pretty much all I can do. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can get anyone to join me here. Let's see. Okay, who do I got here? All right, get an invite. So I got an invitation sent. Yeah, I'm going to pretty much wrap this up here. Maybe we can get something going on here. Like I said, this is some of my first live things, and I've had issues with live where just people come in and they just want stuff, and I kind of go like, really? Is that what we're doing? I don't know. Again, this is definitely the first time I've done a YouTube live. I can tell you that much, and I have no idea how that's gonna go. I've got like 4 likes so far, and that's not much. So whoops. Yeah, I'm not sure how that works as far as like adding up. You know, there's probably no one watching now. I get that. I'm going to put this on here, and we're going to see if we can get some views up here. And I don't know if I can do this every day. I've recently been informed that maybe I should just think about something else on this as far as what I want to do with my life. And yeah, for me, talking about the Muppets and the Avengers, maybe this is a time to kind of maybe not grow up, but at least like grow out a little. I mean, if I can make this work, that's one thing. But yeah, so let's see. What happens if I do something like this? I don't know. Get a lot of people that are saying hi on YouTube. I don't really know how to say hi back, so hi back. Thank you very much for supporting me and stuff like that. I was planning on, I don't know how much I really want to join on, or how much I really want to do this. Hey, maybe I can invite somebody. Can we invite? I don't know. Somebody's obviously joined here. Let's see. Oh boy, guess I didn't have to invite a lot of these people here to do this, and then I guess we're gonna have a good. Hopefully, they know a lot about Muppets and Avengers. If they do, and honestly, I couldn't even fit in the title of this thing, so I'm gonna have to really get in as far as like on TikTok goes. So yeah, that was kind of a surprise for me. I was down there going like, hey, I want to put in the title of going live, and it's like. Entered the title, and I wanted to put like crazy crossovers, Muppets with Avengers, and I couldn't even fit it all in there. I had to put like just Muppet Avengers, Muppet Avenger. I couldn't even put on the S, you know. But then again, I added the crazy crossover thing, so maybe I'm gonna have to take that off and stuff like that. Okay, need a water break here. Okay. Now, as far as like maybe there's some ideas that I think they could do with this. Actually, it's kind of funny because if you watch, say, Sesame Street now, there are a few sketches they do with Cookie Monster where he's kind of involved in other movies. They did one for Twilight, which I thought was pretty funny. One of my personal favorites is when he did one for Life of Pi, where he was. That one has one of the best jokes ever in the world. And and I think Cookie Monster actually kind of did this whole Avengers thing where he talks about teamwork and stuff like that. So I can see the Muppets being full in teamwork and stuff like that. That feels like something that they would be really into and really showing something positive about, which I'd really like. And I'd really like to see that. So hopefully we can get a good invite here. And maybe I should have kept doing this from the beginning, but I guess I wanted to get all my ideas out there. And at this point in time, I think I've pretty much squished myself clean as far as my other ideas. Now, for tomorrow, I'm going to talk about something that I don't even have barely any idea for. It's the Fantastic Four meets the Incredibles, and also owned both by Disney, so they could easily make that into something. Gotta admit, I feel like we should almost. It feels like, why haven't we seen this before? You own rights to both of it. Why haven't you mixed it together? Especially in an age where it feels like we are more into IP than original ideas, and that it just sort of has become this kind of thing where we're just not even seeing any original ideas anymore. We're just seeing all these franchises and reboots and stuff like that. So it just feels obvious to me, if you own this and you own that, just mix them together and then make it sort of a thing. And it appears that, I mean, I think we know that Marvel is trying to really, I mean, they are really banking everything on this, their two new Avengers projects. I think it's like Doomsday and Secret Wars. I forget which one comes first. Even bringing back Robert Downey Jr. to play Doctor Doom, which I kind of thought, that's kind of like, oh, you're really desperate, aren't you? And yeah, it does feel like a huge move of desperation. But I get why they're doing that, because it's like, yeah, I mean, they really want that glory back that sadly peaked at Infinity War / Endgame. What else can you say? When you do a thing as epic as that, I mean, it's really hard to kind of, anyway. So, as far as like the Muppets and Avengers, I mean, shoot, you could do greater projects. I haven't really thought about other stuff that they could do. I talked about the Guardians of the Galaxy and how you could implement that as a team. Eternals, though, yeah, you're gonna have to make your own Muppets for that. If you could use some old obscure Muppet characters on that, because no one cares about the Eternals really. Thunderbolts, though, that got pretty popular over time. I mean, that did make its maybe, did it make $1 billion? I don't know, but it made a lot of money, and it did. Word eventually got out as far as how good that film was. I wonder who could play the Winter Soldier in that. Was there a Muppet that could be the Winter Soldier? I'm trying hard. I can't really think. I think I mean, I covered most of them in the usual. I mean, I don't know. And the Muppets have like handful of characters that just everybody knows, and they have obscure characters that just like only people that watch the Muppets would probably know, and that's fine, because that's the way the Muppets are. I really want to see more of the Muppets in something. I just do, but the problem is I just know what's going to happen. Eventually, they're going to make another. What's probably going to happen is they're going to make another Muppet movie, and which is probably just going to be just a celebration of the Muppets, kind of like the way the Jason Segel movie was. I have no problem with that, but you kind of already did that. I feel like if you can take the Muppets and put them in a new direction, and maybe dressing them up as the Avengers and kind of putting them in their own sort of superhero universe, that might be a way to go. The Muppets were always very good at satire. Just the way like Family Guy is very good at satire and stuff like that. They're just kind of there. They're sort of like a canvas that you can paint any little satire picture you want. And with the Avengers, I have no idea like what direction they're going to go as far as the MCU future, and kind of don't really care. I don't even know if I'm even going to see those films in the theater when they come out, because that's the beauty of having Disney Plus now. It's like eventually this is just going to come out on Disney Plus, and they make films like, say, the last Lilo and Stitch remake that I kind of went like, why would I want to even see this? This looks awful. And then I just kind of go like, eh. And then I watch it and it's like, yep, that's pretty much exactly what I thought it was. So yeah, you get stuff like that. So as far as like, but yeah, I mean, maybe it's just the kid in me that just doesn't die, and the fact that I just want to see the Muppets again. And but here's the thing about this thing: there's just certain things you just can never bring back to their original glory. It seems like, I mean, I grew up with Scooby-Doo, but it seems like every time they try and bring back Scooby-Doo, if they try and change the formula, it ruins it. They're really, the only way to do it is to bring it back to that original formula, where they were just hunting down mysteries and the ghosts were, are always like people in disguise and stuff like that. That seems to work very well for the Scooby-Doo formula. Every time they try and add like, I don't know, where they make them real monsters or something like that, or the Scoob movie, which wasn't even really a Scoob movie. It was more like an excuse to make some sort of weird Hanna-Barbera connected universe, which you could tell they were really trying on that, and it just didn't really work out. And it feels like if they bring back the Muppets, they're going to want to try and bring back some sort of weird Muppet connected universe or something like that, and that's just not really going to work out really well. So yeah, but you never know. Maybe somebody will come up with something, and they'll kind of make that work. And if the Avengers are the thing that does it with, that's going to be like that. But until then, we're getting stuff that we've seen before. And, they try and bring back Star Wars to what it was like in the late 70s and the early 80s, and you can't. You really can't bring it back to that. There was something about that. Lightning can't strike twice. It just doesn't work. So with the Muppets, you could try and bring them back as a show, like a variety show, like they were originally, and maybe that's what you have to do. But I kind of feel like we've kind of done this before. What more can we do with this thing? It kind of feels like when Jim Henson was still alive, I think he was really into his puppetry, and he really wanted to make a new form of entertainment. And he truly did. And he made almost a genre in and of itself. And that's something that I don't think I'll ever do as a creator, to create a genre of something in and of itself. I mean, we have a lot of great YouTube creators and TikTok creators who make wonderful content that is better than some of the stuff that big Hollywood puts out. And it's kind of really awesome. And when it came to pioneers like Jim Henson, who just really just created this wonderful world that was not only just that both children and adults could enjoy, we just don't get that like that now. I mean, he was really ahead of his time. And I feel like now we're starting to get more children's shows that adults can sit down and enjoy as much as their kids. But we didn't really have that back then. And in the 80s or something like that, in the 70s, children's programming was very pandering. It was a lot like, I think they took the wrong message from Sesame Street, and they basically just said, maybe let's have kids learn, or let's talk down to kids. Muppet Show never really talked down to kids. Muppet Show was about being entertaining and stuff like that. And these superhero movies are starting to be more oriented towards adults, but at the same time, the MCU has its share of problems that a lot of people like me who have criticized the MCU as far as its quippy dialogue and how like every other MCU looks the same as the other. And it's like, well, that's probably by design, because they want you to be in this connected universe and stuff like that. As far as every other Muppet film goes, I mean, some do look different, but that's only because of a time period. I'm very certain that they have shifted directors several times. And then when Jim Henson didn't get involved, that was an issue. I don't remember who directed the first Muppet movie. That might have been Jim Henson, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look some of the stuff up. But yeah, so basically, I think it's smart of them to, and the Muppets have always been, they were a very tight-knit group of creators. And so they very rarely had non-Muppet performers direct their films. I think the last one they did, they decided not to do that anymore. And they basically, because, I mean, here's the thing about certain directors. There are certain directors who know really good things and can keep this up. But say, for example, they got Lawrence Kasdan to do Return of the Jedi, but he didn't really know a lot about special effects. And so he didn't really know how to direct certain scenes. And George Lucas had to kind of take over for him for the most part, because Lawrence Kasdan was a very character-driven writer and filmmaker. But he did write Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is, one of the greatest films of all time, I think, at least action-wise. Yeah, there's a Muppet crossover I want to see with Kermit as Indiana Jones, but they kind of already did that on Muppet Babies. Which, if you haven't watched Muppet Babies, I remember the first 2 seasons, and that actually had 8 seasons. I didn't find that out until I was a lot older than I was watching it, and I have no idea within the 8 seasons if they were just rerunning things, because that happened a lot. A lot of Saturday morning cartoons were on for many seasons, but they were just showing reruns. They just did that. With the Muppet Show, I mean, that survived a lot in syndication. I remember seeing them on TNT when I was a teenager, and trying to watch all of it was, this is before the age of streaming, and and before the age where they had DVD on TV, or you couldn't really, if you had a show, you just had to tape it and then just kind of own it, because it's not like they had the entire seasons or anything like that. They just didn't do that back then. I guess people weren't really interesting. So every time you clicked on the television, you got what you got. And so with the Muppets, it was that way. And it's weird we now live in an age where we kind of have this stuff going on. So anyway, all right, I'm going to bring this to a close, even though it's not quite 4 o'clock. I don't really think there's anything more I can really talk about this. It'll be very interesting when I get to tomorrow's topic. And we'll finish out the week with what we're going to talk about here, because I'm very excited on the Fridays topic, and you already know it if you are following my YouTube channel and my TikTok channel. And I want to see how this has affected my performance online here. Has it? We'll find out. Okay, this is Mark Rollins from the Geek Church, signing off.